Myst, Might, Mayhem. By Han Jung-Wioya. Chapter 272. Blood Saint. Part 1. The foundation of illusion techniques is to deceive the five senses. What are the five senses? It's literal. The five senses you possess. It can be sight, hearing, smell, taste, or touch. How does one deceive them? Humans can unconsciously recall sensations they have experienced before. What does that mean? For example, when you think of sour food, your mouth automatically waters. What do you think is the reason for that? That is the unconscious recollection of sensations. Then, if illusion techniques deceive this, it makes people unconsciously recall a situation and accept it as natural. She had learned everything about illusion techniques from her master. Except for her master and the one who had taught them this secret art, she was confident that no one could surpass her in this field. Holding her nose, she looked at Mok Jiangun with an incomprehensible gaze. Why didn't it work? Illusion techniques that drive one to extreme self-harm are very difficult because the body or mind unconsciously and strongly rejects them. However, temporarily turning hostility like this was surprisingly easy. It was because one only needed to unconsciously select the target of hostility. But this guy, the illusion technique itself didn't work on him. That can't be. Of course, illusion techniques were not absolute. If the opponent had reached the peak of enlightenment and completely transcended, or if their mental strength was even stronger than hers, it might not work. However, after exchanging blows, it didn't seem like the former, and the latter was even more impossible. After being imprisoned in the underground prison, she had lost track of the years, but even before that, she had already surpassed 160 years. Not only her age but also her mental strength, which had not succumbed despite enduring torture and not consuming food for a long time, could not be surpassed by this young lad. Is it a mistake? Just in case, she stared intently at Mok Jiangun while inwardly chanting mantras and flicking her finger. Flick. From now on, go and kill your comrades. What are you doing? Huh? She was dumbfounded. The illusion technique really didn't work. For her, who could make someone fall under an illusion even with just a sound made by her hand while covering their eyes and mouth, this situation was beyond comprehension. To her, Mok Jiangun said, I don't know what you were trying to do, but how about ending it here? If I were really an embroidered uniform guard, I would have tried to stop you somehow. Instead, I helped you get released, but attacking me like this doesn't seem like proper etiquette towards a benefactor. Nonsense. It's not nonsense. Do you think I would believe your words? There's no reason not to believe me, is there? No reason not to believe? There are more than enough reasons. You people have used all sorts of methods to get what you wanted from me. Interrogations, torture, all kinds of persuasion tactics. But when I refused to speak, you went even further and cut off my food supply, starving me for dozens of years. Dozens of years? Mok Jiangun frowned. Did she just say with her own mouth that she had been starving for decades? Was her mind wandering? How could she have survived starving for decades, not just a few days? If a human starved for even a few days, they would become haggard, and if it continued for a long time, they would lose weight and become emaciated. However, there was none of that in her appearance. As he was puzzled, she spoke. You deliberately released me as if it were a mistake, giving me hope and then trying to subdue me again to break my will. I'll make you realize that this is your foolish mistake. Roar. As soon as those words ended, energy surged from her. Her true energy was so strong that even wind pressure was generated. Seeing this, Mok Jiangun sighed. He had thought she was a pawn he could use appropriately, but perhaps because she had been imprisoned for a long time, her mind seemed to be wandering, and she couldn't trust anyone at all. Does she consider the situation itself a trap? If that was the case, no matter what he said, it wouldn't get through to her. Mok Jiangun looked at her as if he was annoyed. He needed to hurry, but he was being held back at an absurd point. Mok Jae-eun then looked at her with a sharp gaze. Then, he muttered softly. "There's no other choice." It seemed better to just kill her as quickly as possible. With this in mind, Mok Jae-eun was about to assume a martial stance when he felt a presence behind him and turned his head. Looking back, he saw an embroidered uniform guard Chief Banner standing with a perplexed expression. The impact from her claw energy had been so great that it shook the cave passage, so it would have been strange if he hadn't come here. Oh damn it. The embroidered uniform guard Chief Banner was greatly startled by the sight of the escaped prisoner. Right then. Flick. The sound of a finger flicking was heard. At that moment, the embroidered uniform guard Chief Banner's eyes suddenly lost focus. Then, he shouted at Mok Jae-eun and charged at him. Die. Huh? When the person who had been perplexed upon seeing the escaped prisoner suddenly displayed killing intent towards him, Mok Jae-eun couldn't hide his confusion. However, the martial prowess of the embroidered uniform guard Chief Banner was only at the beginning of the peak realm. Naturally, there was no way he could be a match for Mok Jae-eun. Swish. After easily dodging his saber that aimed to cut his neck, thud. He struck down on the Chief Banner's wrist, causing him to drop his saber. As the saber fell, before it even touched the ground, he kicked the hilt towards her. Swish. The saber rushed towards her forehead as if to pierce it. Humph. As she swiftly turned her head to the side, the saber blade collided with her long hair infused with true energy and ended up stuck in the wall. Thud. But it didn't end there. Ugh. The embroidered uniform guard Chief Banner, who had fallen under her illusion, flew towards her. Huh? In an instant, she frowned. Then, she unleashed her claw energy towards the flying embroidered uniform guard Chief Banner, tearing his entire body into pieces. Swish 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 swish. As his body was divided into dozens of pieces, blood splattered everywhere. But in the midst of that, someone passed through and thrust their sword fingers towards her neck. It was none other than Mok Jae-eun. Thud. Caught off guard by the unexpected attack, her left shoulder was pierced by the aura infused in his sword fingers. This bastard? Her eyes gleamed with interest. He threw his own comrade to obscure her vision and then attacked through that gap? What the hell was he doing? Swish swish. The puzzled woman then dodged Mok Jae-eun's sword fingers, aiming for her neck with an elegant footwork technique, and widened the distance. Swish 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 swish. While widening the distance, the pierced area on her shoulder sizzled, and the blood stopped flowing. Noticing this, Mok Jae-eun's eyes narrowed. The wound? The healing speed surpassed human limits. He also had a fast recovery rate for injuries, but her speed far exceeded that. If it could heal immediately after being pierced, it wasn't just recovery but the realm of super regeneration. Does it heal even with death energy? Death energy disperses martial power. However, it seemed unable to stop the regeneration of her body. At that moment, Mok Jae-eun's eyes caught sight of thunder power sparking from her wound. It seemed that power was promoting the regeneration. While he was marveling, swish! She counterattacked with her claw energy, and Mok Jae-eun twisted his body to the side. Then, he tried to strike her wrist, which was unleashing claw energy, with his elbow. In response, she used a variation to avoid it and aimed for Mok Jae-eun's neck. Swish 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 swish. In a flash, their hands clashed about 6 times, and they were both pushed back. Swish 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 swish. Swish 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 swish. The woman who was pushed back raised an eyebrow and looked at her red-stained hand. I'm using blood jade hand and strong energy simultaneously, but he's blocking it with a strange strong energy in an instant. Her martial art, which turned her hands into blood-red jade, was called Blood Jade Hand, a divine technique that combined claw and palm techniques. Its power was enough to crush rocks and tear iron with bare hands. If strong energy was added to the Blood Jade Hand, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was difficult to find an equal match in close combat. However, the fierce feeling strong energy unleashed in an instant was blocking it. The power was completely different from ordinary strong energy. Who the hell is this bastard? On the surface, he didn't even look to be in his prime. Even if her body wasn't fully loosened and she wasn't exerting her full strength, it was unbelievable that a young lad who hadn't even lived for 20 years could almost match her. She thought she could easily subdue him, but it seemed difficult to do so without going all out. Inwardly clicking her tongue, she opened her mouth. "You're no ordinary fellow. That's what I'd like to say to you." Mok Jaeyoung was also inwardly amazed by her martial prowess. It was doubtful whether she had really been imprisoned in the underground prison for a long time, considering how agile and lively her movements were. Moreover, her internal energy and martial power were beyond imagination. It flowed endlessly like an inexhaustible spring, making him wonder how they had managed to confine such a monstrous woman. According to Chong Ryong, in terms of martial power, he was infinitely close to the profound realm. Except for the six heavens, who were at the current peak, there were hardly any in the martial arts world who could match him, aside from the 8 stars, who were called the greatest masters of the era. However, it seemed he had encountered such a person quite quickly. Was it the 9 Blood cult? Come to think of it, both Mong Muyak and Chong Ryong had mentioned that during the era of the old martial arts world, the level of martial prowess of the masters was even higher than now. Looking at this woman, it certainly seemed that way. I'll have to go all out. Mok Jaeyoung had been controlling his martial power to the maximum extent possible due to the deep underground cave. So he had only unleashed demonic energy in the instant of clashing. However, that level seemed insufficient to deal with this woman. With this, Mok Jaeyoung released the control he had been maintaining and circulated demonic energy throughout his entire body. Then, roar! A sinister black energy flowed out from Mok Jaeyoung. Seeing this, wariness appeared in her eyes. Look at this bastard. She had thought he was quite skilled, but if he exerted his full strength, she believed she could kill him within about 30 moves. However, when Mok Jaeyoung revealed his demonic energy, her thoughts changed. Even if she went all out, it wasn't a level where she could settle the match within 30 moves. I'll have to be a bit more serious. Crackle, 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 crackle. At that moment, blue sparks erupted from her entire body, and lightning enveloped her. The moment she revealed the thunder power she had been concealing, Mok Jaeyoung made the first move. He intended to settle the match before she could fully demonstrate her abilities. Tap tap. Mok Jaeyoung tapped the ground twice, and with a gust of wind, his figure split into 2 and charged towards her. This was the wind god steps he had stolen and learned from the 1,000-men commander of the embroidered uniform guards, Ma-Are Hyen. However, seeing Mok Jaeyoung's mysterious lightness skill that split his figure into 2, her eyes widened. This is? Chapter 273. Blood Saint. Part 2. Tap 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 tap. 6th Office Commander Im Gyu-wool of the Embroidered Uniform Guards, which oversees all the prison battlefields in the Imperial Palace, was leading 4 100-men commanders of the Embroidered Uniform Guards and someone wearing a bamboo hat down to Eternal Hell prison battlefield. Just by looking at Im Gyu-wool's serious expression as he moved, it was clear that the situation was very urgent. Damn it. Trying to catch a flea, we ended up burning down the whole house. Trainee Bei Jisuk and Trainee Ju Wonhyang. The prison battlefield map was changed to catch those 2, and that became the trigger. Even if it was changed, it should have been designed to only lead them into the mechanism trap, but unintentionally, it led them to a place that should never be approached. Cell number 126. Not just the cell itself, but even approaching the surrounding area was forbidden. That was because that place was very dangerous. The monster known as the remnant of the 9 Blood cult had enchanted the Embroidered Uniform Guards with a mysterious illusion technique despite being fully restrained. Therefore, without sufficient preparation, one should never approach within the designated radius. Tap. Im Gyu-wool, who had descended to Eternal Hell prison battlefield, hastened due to his anxious heart. If, by any chance, the prisoner of cell number 126 were to escape, it would be no different from the worst-case scenario. Not only was resolving the issue a problem, but as the head of the 4th office, he might have to take full responsibility. Thus, he had to prevent it before it happened. We must hurry. While running ahead through the cave passage of Eternal Hell Prison battlefield, 6th Office Commander Imguel frowned. Clang 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 clang. That was because the sound of weapons clashing could be heard from one of the guard posts deep inside Eternal Hell Prison battlefield. Wondering what was happening, he ran towards that location. What in the world? The guards who were supposed to be guarding the post were desperately fighting against someone. However, that someone was not the dreaded cell number 126. To be precise, it was multiple people, and they were none other than the prisoners who should have been locked up. Ha 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 ha. Die. Die. How dare you bastards try to capture us? The prisoners, filled with murderous intent, were rampaging with a strange madness in their bloodshot eyes, and the guards who had trained in martial arts were desperately trying to subdue them. Clench. 6th Office Commander Imguel bit his lower lip hard. He didn't know how they had managed to escape from the prison cells, but the situation had become even more twisted than he had feared. Damn it. Imguel glanced back at the person wearing the bamboo hat. The one who slightly lifted his bamboo hat and shook his head was none other than Defender-in-Chief Muxium. Defender-in-Chief Muxium muttered, "Handle it. I'll go further in." At these words from Defender-in-Chief Muxium, Imguel nodded his head as if he had no choice. Swish. Then, he drew his sword and said, "Subdue them." "Yes, sir." With that, Imguel and the 4 100-men commanders of the embroidered uniform guards launched their figures towards the rampaging prisoners. Near the innermost part of Eternal Hell Prison battlefield. Her eyes trembled. That's right. Even at a young age, not falling for the illusion technique is certain. Crackle 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 crackle. Enveloped in the blue sparks of lightning, she suddenly retracted her thunder power upon seeing Mok Jaeyoungun's figure splitting into two and charging at her, leaving after images. Then, whoosh! She widened the distance and held out her hand, gesturing for him to stop. Mok Jaeyoungun, who had intended to properly fight her, raised an eyebrow and stood still. Why the sudden change? Just a moment ago, she had been desperate to kill him, unable to trust him. But why was she suddenly withdrawing the energy she had unleashed? As he was puzzled, she suddenly clasped her hands together, bowed respectfully, and spoke in a trembling voice, "6th Blood Saint Dam Bekha pays her respects." What? Moreover, unlike before, she was even using honorifics. He couldn't understand why she was doing this. As she kept her hands clasped, she raised her head, and with reddened eyes, she opened her mouth. "Could it be that you are a member of the true lineage? What are you talking about?" He couldn't comprehend what she meant by member of the true lineage out of nowhere. At Mok Jaeyoungun's reaction, she waved her hands and spoke as if telling him to lower his guard. "I am the direct disciple of the previous generation's 6th Blood Saint Dam Yua, who was personally taught by that person. Although I have unintentionally achieved longevity beyond my station and continue this wretched life, if you are a member of the true lineage, you are no different from my superior. Please, I beg you to lower your guard and speak to me." At her polite words, Mok Jaeyoungun's eyes narrowed. It was still difficult to understand what she was saying. Why was she showing this attitude? What could it be? In an instant, Mok Jaeyoungun traced back the cause of this. It was something that happened after he had unleashed his demonic energy to properly fight her. However, demonic energy was purely his own unique power. Thus, it couldn't be the reason for this. Then, Wind God Steps? To confuse her, he had performed the Wind God Steps that he had stolen and learned from the masked 1,000-man commander of the embroidered uniform guards, Ma'are Hyan. Come to think of it, when he performed this, she withdrew her thunder power and changed her attitude. Her arrogant attitude from before had vanished without a trace. At that moment, something flashed through Mok Jaeyoungun's mind. It was, "Do you perhaps have the surname Jean?" "Surname Jean?" "Yes." "No." "Then, it would be the surname So. All sorts of surnames are coming up. I am from the Mok family." "Mok family?" The conversation he had with the masked thousand-man commander Ma-Are-Hyan. When he said he was from the Mok family, Ma-Are-Hyan showed a strange reaction and then said, "You really did steal and learn the lightness skill." Recalling this, Mok Jayangan was convinced that the change in her attitude was due to the wind god's steps he had stolen and learned. Ma-Are-Hyan had also abruptly asked him if he had the surname Jean. What was the surname Jean or the true lineage that a single lightness skill could change her attitude? Although he didn't know the reason, based on her words introducing herself as the sixth blood Saint Dam Bekha, if he pieced it together to some extent, it seemed that her master, the previous generation's sixth blood Saint Dam Yuhua, had received teachings from the person with the surname Jean. Does she consider me his descendant and treat me respectfully like this? That was all he could speculate at the moment. How great must the prestige of the person with the surname Jean be for the attitude of this monstrous woman to become so polite? At this, Mok Jayangan's eyes became strange. In any case, since he didn't know who the true lineage was, he had no relation to this woman. And if they continued to talk, she would surely realize this before long. However, Mok Jayangan's thinking went beyond ordinary people's and was quite bold. Mok Jayangan judged that he could take advantage of this situation. When she showed killing intent towards him, he had no choice but to kill her, but if he persuaded her appropriately, she could be useful in diverting attention, just like before. Before that, there was one thing he needed to confirm. With this, Mok Jayangan clasped his hands together, bowed respectfully like her, and said, "Did you say you're Dam Bekha? Did you perhaps recognize me because of my lightness skill?" "Ah. So you are indeed from the true lineage?" Dam Bekha asked with sparkling eyes. Seeing this, Mok Jayangan reconfirmed that it was because of the lightness skill. The reason he confirmed this was simple. It was to determine if this lightness skill belonged to the person with the surname Jean, whom she and the masked thousand-men commander Ma-Are-Hyan had mentioned. "I see." With this, Mok Jayangan shook his head and replied, "I apologize. You may have had expectations because of the lightness skill, but I am not from the true lineage." At these words, Dam Bekha, who had been looking at him with hopeful eyes, frowned. "What do you mean you're not from the true lineage?" "It's exactly as I said." At Mok Jayangan's words, Dam Bekha spoke in a disbelieving tone, "That can't be. You are definitely from the true lineage. Just the fact that you can easily withstand the illusion scripture, which that person passed down to me. It's true. How could I deceive you about this? Could it be that you don't trust me? That's not it. If it's because I said I'm the direct disciple of Dam Yuhua, I can also explain the secret of my longevity. Please don't push me away with suspicion. After the cult fell, I spent a long time searching for the bloodlines of the 100 families and the Jean family. So please. I am truly not from the true lineage. Sir. However, my master who taught me the lightness skill might know that person from the true lineage." At Mok Jayangan's words, Dam Bekha's eyes became complicated. Based on the circumstances so far, she had been convinced that he was undoubtedly from the true lineage. But even when he kept insisting he wasn't, she felt disappointed and wondered if he couldn't trust her. Huh? At that moment, a doubt arose in her mind. With this, she asked in a somewhat heavy voice. "You said the person who taught you the lightness skill knows the person from the true lineage. Then, does that mean that person is also not from the true lineage?" "Yes, that's right. That person has a different surname. Do you perhaps know anyone with the surname Ma?" Mok Jayangan asked, just in case. It was certain that the masked thousand-men commander Ma-Are-Hyan had a connection with the person with the surname Jean. So when he imitated the lightness skill, he must have asked about that surname. Crackle. At that moment, Mok Jayangan's eyes, which had opened the ghost eye, saw Dam Bekha drawing upon her thunder power. When he said that he had learned the lightness skill from someone with the surname Ma, her expression turned cold, and she was about to change her attitude once again. With this, Mok Jayangan said, "My master with the surname Ma, who taught me the lightness skill, also told me to treat those with the surnames Jean and so with the utmost respect." Of course, he had never said such a thing. He had only asked if he had the surname Jean and then asked if he had the surname So. So, just in case, he improvised and said this, wondering if the surname So might also be related. However, whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, the thunder power within her body subsided again. Then, Dame Bekha approached Mok Jayangan, grasped the front of his robe with both hands, and spoke in an agitated voice, "Your master. Where is your master? Take me to that person right now." She was convinced that the person with the surname Ma, whom Mok Jayangan mentioned, was related to the bloodline of that person. Otherwise, there was no way he would have mentioned both the surnames Jean and So simultaneously. Mok Jayangan, looking down at her emotionally agitated state, smirked with a shadowed face. Ah. This was enough. She had been well prepared to be appropriately used. Chapter 274. Blood Saint. Part 3. Before long, Mok Jayangan and Dame Bekha, known as the Blood Saint of the Nine Blood Cult, were walking side by side through the cave passage. The agitated appearance from earlier had disappeared, and Dame Bekha, having regained her composure, spoke to Mok Jayangan. "You said you only need to abduct one person, right?" "Yes." "Make sure to keep your promise." "Of course. If I only abduct that person, I will arrange for you to meet the master who taught me the lightness skill." Humph. At Mok Jayangan's words, Dame Bekha snorted as if she didn't trust him, folding her arms. That was understandable because although she had shown a vulnerable side earlier when her emotions were highly agitated, she still couldn't fully trust this guy. For some reason, none of his words felt sincere. She couldn't even tell if his smile was genuine or not. Despite having lived for a long time, this was the first time she encountered someone like him. As they walked through the passage, Dame Bekha frowned and said, "You. The skin around your chin is." It looked densely crowded. Mok Jayangan touched that area and let out a soft sigh. He wasn't sure if it was because of the fight or if he ran out of the medicine he was carrying, but the human skin around his chin was peeling. With this, Mok Jayangan. "Stretch." He pulled his skin to show her. Ordinary skin would have elasticity, but the way it stretched was different. Seeing this, Dame Bekha spoke with narrowed eyes, "Human skin mask?" "Yes." It was the most straightforward way to sneak in here. "So it's not your real face?" "Yes." At this, Dame Bekha clicked her tongue, thinking that made sense. No wonder his martial arts were too outstanding, and his mental strength was exceptionally remarkable for someone who wasn't even in his prime. Perhaps a face of an older age was hidden underneath. As they continued, Mok Jayangan said, "May I ask you something as well?" "What is it?" "I heard that if you're from the blood cult, you're from the old martial arts world. How many years have you been imprisoned?" "Old martial arts world?" Dame Bekha slightly tilted her head. It was an expression she was hearing for the first time. So she asked, "What do you mean by the old martial arts world?" "It's literal. Should I say the martial arts world of the past? I heard that the level of the martial arts world in the past was much higher than it is now." "The past? Ah." At these words, Dame Bekha's eyes became strangely bitter. Did she recall some unpleasant memories from the past? While he was inwardly puzzled, she said, "I have been imprisoned here for so long that I have lost all sense of time. I don't even know if it has been decades or centuries. However, if what you refer to as the old martial arts world is the golden age of martial arts, then that would be correct. But everything changed after that person ascended and several generations passed." "Ascended? You don't know the term ascension through enlightenment?" "Ascension through enlightenment?" Mok Jayangan's eyes narrowed. Ascension through enlightenment. Literally translated, it means a person attains the Tao, becomes an immortal, and ascends to the heavens. This could be interpreted in various ways. It is said that an outstanding Taoist ascends when they pass away, or it refers to truly attaining the Tao and entering the realm of immortals. The ascension that Chong Ryong taught Mok Jayangan also meant martial artists gaining enlightenment through martial arts and entering the immortal realm. Ascension. There was someone who had spoken about a deeper principle regarding ascension. To be precise, it was a being called Salmon, who was more of a strange entity than a human. Suddenly, the words he had said before his annihilation came to mind. Divine beasts? In the first place, they cannot exist in the mortal world. When demonic energy reaches that level, it transcends the natural order. Natural order? You don't know what the natural order is? What is it? The natural order is what sustains this world. It's difficult for humans to understand. You're being ambiguous. The natural order is the natural order. If you transcend that realm, you have no choice but to cross the boundary to the other side due to the natural order. The other side of the boundary? Yes. The same principle applies to ascension. Humans believed that through repeated enlightenment and detachment, they crossed the boundary due to the natural order, and that was considered ascension. Recalling this, Mok Jayangn's eyes gleamed with interest. Actually ascended? Both this person and Chong Ryong had spoken of it as if it were almost legendary. As if it was difficult to actually achieve. But how outstanding must that person mentioned by Dam Bekha have been to cross over to the other side of the boundary due to the natural order? What was certain was that for the strange entities like the Demon Kings, it was said that one had to reach the level of a divine beast to cross over to the other side of the boundary. This meant that that person surpassed even the spiritual beasts called the six demons, who were infinitely close to divine beasts. With curiosity piqued, Mok Jayangan asked, "Who exactly is that person you mentioned who ascended?" That person? At this question, she looked at Mok Jayangan with a strange gaze. Then, she firmly said, "I don't think you're ready to hear about that yet." "Pardon? I haven't met your master yet." "You know what that means, right?" Ah. It meant she didn't trust him. Although he wasn't usually interested in anything other than revenge, he was inwardly curious about who that person was, so it was quite disappointing. Then, she said to Mok Jayangan, "If your master truly knows about the true lineage as you said, you will surely find out in due time, so there's no need to be impatient." "I see. Then, may I ask one more thing?" "One more thing?" "Yes. Do you think I'll answer?" "Well, that's up to you. Actually, I'm just asking out of curiosity." "Just curious?" "Yes. Earlier, you mentioned that they made you starve for decades to make you talk. Is that true?" The woman Mok Jayangan had encountered didn't seem like someone who would lie. Such a person said she had endured for decades without eating anything, but her physical condition was not like that at all. Moreover, she even had the face of someone in her 20s just by appearance. Furthermore, if he combined what she had mentioned in between, it seemed as if she was not an ordinary person but a being close to immortality. At this, she looked at Mok Jayangan with disapproval and opened her mouth. "Why? Are you also interested in longevity or immortality?" To this question, Mok Jayangan answered without a moment's hesitation. "Not really." "What? Is there any great benefit in being interested in such things?" "Benefit? Isn't being able to continue life eternally a benefit? Is that really a benefit? If it's a life that continues endlessly and eternally, wouldn't it be closer to a curse?" At Mok Jayangan's question, Dam Bekha's eyes trembled. Along with it, a very distant memory from the past flashed through her mind. A city in Liaodong province, reduced to ruins with countless corpses. Dam Bekha, covered in blood, couldn't hide her shock as she saw her severed arm regenerate. What? What is this? She had thought that once her arm was cut off, it would never recover again. No, in the first place, it was impossible for an arm to regrow. As she was marveling at this, an old man with a scholar-like appearance and a face so pale it was almost white approached her, clicking his tongue. "You drank that, didn't you? Elder? If you're talking about that, then what is it?" "It's the blood of a spirit creature." "Blood? Are you referring to the blood of that monster?" "That's right." "Ah." At those words, her eyes trembled. Come to think of it, when she cut off one of the heads of that monster spewing lightning, she seemed to have unintentionally swallowed the blood that spurted out. After that, she had lost consciousness due to the burning pain throughout her entire body. So she said, "I think that's what happened. Is that why my arm healed?" It seems so. Then, for the other injured people as well. Don't do that. Why? If they drink the blood of that monster, their bodies. 9 out of 10, no, 99 out of 100 won't be able to endure it and will die. What? Die? What do you mean by that? Apart from you, most of those who drank the blood of the spirit creature, whether by mistake or coincidence, couldn't endure it and died. With those words, the old man pointed to the people who had died, charred black around the spirit creature. They all had a form of death where their blood vessels had exploded. It seems that the blood of a spirit creature is not something ordinary humans can endure. Then, why am I? It appears that you have been blessed with heavenly luck. Heavenly luck. Was she really lucky? To the dazed Dambekha, the old man patted her shoulder and said, "Whether this will truly become heavenly luck or poison is unknown, but if this is also your fate, then accept it." What do you mean by it becoming poison? At her question, the old man stroked his beard and spoke as if he felt sorry. In the ancient secret book of the lost classic of mountains and seas, it is said that those who consume the blood or essence of a spirit creature possessing the spiritual power of the 5 elements will achieve immortality. Immortality? That's right. You also have a very high probability of becoming immortal. But why do you say it's poison? Isn't it a blessing instead? A blessing? Ho ho ho. At these words, the old man let out a chuckle with an incomprehensible expression. As she was puzzled, the old man stopped laughing and said, "Living a long life is not a blessing. It's closer to a curse." A curse? Yes, it's a curse. Why do you think that guy, who was no different from an immortal being, left you and the bloodline descendants behind and ascended? Why? Because he couldn't endure it every time his loved ones left his side one by one. In a way, his choice might have been wise. At that time, she somewhat understood the old man's words, but they didn't really resonate with her. It was because she only considered immortality as a blessing. However, as she lived through a long time, she now fully realized the meaning of those words the old man had said to her. This guy. Dambekha, looking at Mok Jyangun, inwardly clicked her tongue. He had never experienced longevity and the things that happened because of it, yet he was saying the exact same words that the old senior had said to her. If it weren't for her given mission, she might have also ended this wretched life in some way. So she said to Mok Jyangun, do you know what you're talking about? Who knows? It just doesn't seem nice to live long while everyone around you dies. At Mok Jyangun's answer, she let out a sigh of admiration. She felt truly foolish. Seeing him take it for granted without even experiencing it. Sighing deeply, she then said to Mok Jyangun, "You are truly wise. You are right. This is not a blessing but literally a curse. If I hadn't become immortal, I wouldn't have had to suffer like this." Flinch. At that moment, Dambekha stopped speaking and looked somewhere. It was the right side of the forked path in the cave. Coincidentally, Mok Jyangun was already looking there even before she did. This is? Roar. From the darkness, an immense murderous intent and a deep, evil energy were emanating. Along with it, someone was approaching them. Thud, thud. At the sound of footsteps, Dambekha said to Mok Jyangun, "It's not an ordinary person. Can you feel it?" "Yes, I can." As they looked there with eyes filled with vigilance, the figure finally showed itself within the range illuminated by the torch. It was none other than Zhu Wenhyang? Trainee Zhu Wenhyang. However, Zhu Wenhyang's condition was not normal. Not only were his eyes emitting a strange light, but the evil energy emanating from his entire body had completely erased his originally pure and righteous innate true energy. Wondering what had happened, Dambekha couldn't hide her astonishment when she saw the peculiar shaped sword in Zhu Wenhyang's hand. How did that sword At her words, Mok Jaeongun's gaze also turned there. Although obscured by the evil energy, a tremendous demonic nature could be felt from the sword. Do you know about that? To the puzzled Mok Jaeongun, she spoke in a lowered tone as if warning him. It's the demonic sword plundering killing sword made by Oyezi. Chapter 275. Blood Saint. Part 4. Oyezi, the Great Swordsmith. Legendary swords such as the Great Destroyer, Juk, Black, Zhanlu, Purity, Chuanjuan, Victory over Evil, Xingxia, Fish Belly, Yuchang, Dragon Gulf, Long Yuan, Great Riverbank, Tai, and Artisanal Display, Gongbu, were all born from his hands. There was an unofficial record that such a great swordsmith had melted the legendary Guanya black iron, which could not be melted through human sacrifices, to create demonic swords. Those demonic swords were none other than the 3 demonic swords known to have been discovered in a royal tomb. Evil Commandment Sword, Hell-Hacking Blade, Plundering Killing Sword. These 3 swords were discovered by a local official and a merchant in a collapsed royal tomb. As a result, it brought a bloody storm to the martial arts world at that time. Is that one of those 3 demonic swords, the Plundering Killing Sword? At Mok Jaeongun's words, the 6th blood saint Dam Bekha snorted and replied, 3 swords. Right. That's how the rumor went. Pardon? No, that's not important. More importantly, I don't know why that thing is here, but this has become quite troublesome. Dam Bekha glanced at the plundering killing sword and then looked at Zhu Wenhyang's eyes, which were emitting a strange light. It seemed he was properly possessed by the sword's demonic energy. She clicked her tongue and said, of all things, he had to be captured by the demonic sword known as the Worst. The Worst? Is it to that extent? You may not know, but after that sword revealed itself to the world again, it passed through 3 owners, and the number of people they killed combined exceeds nearly 1,000. 1,000? Oh ho! Interest arose in Mok Jaeongun's eyes. How strong must the sword's demonic energy be to cause such a massacre? No, in the first place, is it possible to cause a bloody calamity just because the sword's demonic energy is strong? Right at that moment. You too. Your bodies look good. Whoosh. Zhu Wenhyang, who was captured by the demonic sword, launched his figure towards them. Instantly closing the distance, Zhu Wenhyang swung the plundering killing sword, and along with tremendous wind pressure, an aura filled with demonic energy swept in all directions. Humph. Swish 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 swish. Of course, Dam Bekha wouldn't just take it. Get out of the way. Pushing Mok Jaeongun to the side, she stepped forward. Stepping forward like that, she unleashed the Blood Jade Hand technique, a pinnacle skill, and quickly unleashed claw techniques with her red-stained hands, then split apart all the aura. Not stopping there, she penetrated right in front of Zhu Wenhyang with an elegant footwork technique and unleashed the killing move of the Blood Jade Hand. Blood Jade Hand third stance, unchanging blood claw. Swish. The power of the killing move, with blue-colored strong energy imbued in her blood-stained hands, was utterly tyrannical. The power was so strong that it seemed like it would tear apart the opponent in an instant. However, Zhu Wenhyang drew a circle with his sword towards her claw technique. Then, boom! The air inside the circle rippled like waves. Swish 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 swish. The killing move of the Blood Jade Hand she unleashed was bounced back. Moreover, the power was also fully bounced back, causing Dam Bekha to hurriedly block it and be pushed back. Swish 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 swish. Pushed back about 5 steps, she muttered with an annoyed expression, scripture of transferring true chi. Was this one of the abilities of the plundering killing sword that she had only heard about? She never expected it to bounce back her killing move like that. Actually experiencing it, it was indeed a surprising and wicked technique, just as she had been warned. Swish. She raised her head and looked at Zhu Wenhyang. Her lips turned slightly pale. Although it was difficult to accurately gauge the level due to the evil energy, the demonic energy was so strong that it was drawing out power far beyond her original limits. To this extent, I don't know how long that child's original true energy, who is captured by the demonic sword, will last, but to this extent, he may exhaust it all and die within a few hours. In that sense, if she bought time, he would continue to weaken. Of course, there was another way to deal with him besides that. Overwhelming martial power. The stronger the opponent's power, the more the demonic sword had no choice but to draw out the host's original true energy. If that happens, the host will eventually lose his life due to the rapid consumption of original true energy. That should do it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Dame Becca's hands, having decided how to deal with the opponent, exuded even more luster. The blood jade hand, when its power is raised to the 7th level or higher, makes the hand smooth and lustrous like jade. She, who had drawn upon her martial power, said to Mok Jiangun, "Go ahead first. I will deal with that child." "You're going to deal with him alone? What do you take me for? No matter how much he is captured by the demonic energy, I don't need to borrow someone else's hands to that extent. And the longer we delay the escape, the more disadvantageous it is for us." "You're right." Mok Jiangun slightly raised the corners of his mouth. Even though he didn't particularly request it, she was moving according to his intentions. If she buys time and draws the attention of the embroidered uniform guards, what could be better than that? "Then, thank you." Mok Jiangun, who was about to say he would go, looked at Zhu Wenhyang, who was captured by the demonic sword. He was a guy he quite liked. Although he didn't know how he got captured by the demonic sword like that. Mok Jiangun shrugged his shoulders. Although he liked him, that was all there was to it. He had no intention of spending his time to save him or do such a thing just for that one reason. However, if it's not too much trouble, could you try to take away the sword without killing that friend? It's not just any demonic sword, it's the plundering killing sword. It seems he is completely captured by the demonic energy. Do you think that's possible? If it's difficult, don't push yourself. Are you close friends? Not to that extent, just consider him a friend I like. Don't have high expectations. Whoosh. With those words, Dame Becca launched her figure towards Zhu Wenhyang, who was captured by the demonic sword. Seeing this, Mok Jiangun smirked and laughed. It seemed that if he had heavenly luck, he would survive, and if not, it was his fate to die here. Like that, Mok Jiangun, who had entrusted Zhu Wenhyang, who was captured by the demonic sword, to the 9 blood cult's blood saint Dame Becca, headed towards the deepest part of eternal hell prison. There was someone he had to abduct in cell number 270. Since he had memorized the entire map, Mok Jiangun was able to reach there without falling into the mechanism traps. The prison cell made of thick iron bars. Mok Jiangun's eyes gleamed with interest as he stood in front of it. That was because there was a human figure sitting cross-legged with eyes closed in the dark cell, and when he shone the torch, it was an old woman with a haggard but graceful appearance. He had heard that she held a quite high position in the Fire Faith Order, but it was different from what he had expected. Ting! Mok Jiangun flicked his finger and rang the iron bars of the cell. Then, the old woman who had her eyes closed slowly opened them and turned her head. The old woman stared intently at Mok Jiangun and said, "Is it mealtime?" "Yes, it's mealtime." "But you come empty-handed." "Yes, I came in a hurry." "Came in a hurry?" Hearing these words, the old woman soon raised the corners of her mouth, uncrossed her legs, and got up from her seat. Clank! However, due to the iron shackles, chains, and weights restraining her legs, she staggered and barely found balance, straightening her body. Having struggled to stand up like that, she said to Mok Jiangun, "The wait was worth it." "Right? Worth the wait? Aren't you the person who came to take me?" At these words, Mok Jiangun's eyes narrowed. She spoke as if she knew he would come here. With this, he recalled the words of the embroidered uniform guard associate military commissioner Sangik Seo, who had the female of the Gu poison, Command Gu. That Fire Faith Order believer received a revelation from the Holy Fire or something, and she was able to foresee the future. The reason she had been imprisoned in eternal hell prison until now. It was precisely because she was able to foresee this. However, according to Associate Military Commissioner Sangik Seo, he had heard that although she could do it before, she couldn't do it at all after being imprisoned in Eternal Hell Prison. They had tested her unexpectedly several times, but she couldn't do it at all. Regarding this, both the higher-ups of the Imperial Palace and the organization with the mark speculated that the Holy Fire Priestess was hiding something called the Sacred Orb, causing her to lose her ability to foresee. But apart from that, could she foresee? With this, Mok Jayanan asked, "Did you foresee that I would come? I knew someone would come to save me. Did you foresee it? Didn't I say? I already knew that someone would come to save me. Wait, are you not the one who came to save me?" The old woman's eyes changed to suspicion. Because of Mok Jayanan's question, she wondered if it was a trick of the embroidered uniform guards to deceive her. With this, Mok Jayanan shook his head and said, "I did come to save you. But you said you could foresee, so I just wanted to ask if that was really possible. How can I believe that? If you ask how to believe, does that mean you have no intention of leaving here?" At Mok Jayanan's words, the old woman frowned. "It's true that it's my fate to leave here at this point, but it's better to be careful. The one who will save me is someone with a strong tie to me. Show me the proof of that. If you can foresee the future, do you really need that proof? Foreseeing is ultimately like finding a way through smoke-filled gray. Just because you can read that path doesn't mean you can know everything in detail. Do you need something called the Sacred Orb to know?" Clang. As soon as those words ended, the old woman took a step back with a stiff expression. "You tested me again." "I didn't test you. I just asked because I was curious whether the real reason many people are looking for you is because of the foresight or for another reason." At Mok Jayanan's words, the old woman frowned. Then, she soon said, "I can't distinguish right now whether you are truly the one who came to save me or a trick of the embroidered uniform guards to deceive me. But even if you are the former, if you make me waste time like this to satisfy your curiosity, we may not be able to leave here. If you knew through foresight that I would come to take you, shouldn't you also be certain about leaving? Just as one can read the celestial energies but not know everything that will happen in the future, receiving the revelation of the holy fire doesn't mean one can know everything. I merely interpret the revelation with these eyes and find the right path. You're only saying things that can't be understood. Then, let me ask directly. Why are you? It's natural for the Fire Faith Order to rescue you since you are the Holy Fire Priestess, but even the leader of the Heaven and Earth Society. Screech! Screech! Mok Jayanan drew something on the iron bars with his aura. It was a mark with a vertical line passing through the center of the number 2. Seeing this, the old woman's eyes widened. I'm curious about the reason why the organization with this mark is after you. No, the Sacred Orb. At these words, the old woman asked in a trembling voice. Who are you? Who are you that you even know that mark? Before she could finish her sentence. Please be quiet for a moment. What? Mok Jayanan slightly turned his head and looked at the rightmost among the 3 passages. Then, someone wearing a bamboo hat walked out from there. The person who walked out soon took off the bamboo hat he was wearing as if it was cumbersome, and he was none other than Defender-in-Chief Mook Siem. Defender-in-Chief Mook Siem opened his mouth with a cold expression. I headed here first, wondering if other prisoners in the prison had been released, and my prediction was correct. Who are you? That's what I should be asking. How did an apprentice trainee of the embroidered uniform guards come here? I don't even need to ask if the Fire Faith Order sent you. Swish. With those words, Defender-in-Chief Mook Siem slowly drew his sword. The moment he drew it, the surrounding air became so heavy that it was suffocating due to the tremendous energy. The old woman was panting, enough to plop down on the floor. Thud, thud. Defender-in-Chief Mook Siem approached and said, If you don't want your neck to be sliced by this sword, it's best to open your mouth right now. Are you a second-tier executive? At the unexpected question that came out of Mok Jayanan's mouth, Defender-in-Chief Mook Siem suddenly hesitated. Who the hell is this guy? He naturally thought he would be from the Fire Faith Order since he was where the Holy Fire Priestess was. But how does he know his position? You. Swish. At that moment, Mok Jian'an put his hands behind his back and exuded a strong pressure with his energy, saying, "Roar." What should a second-tier executive do when seeing a first-tier executive? What? At that instant, Defender-in-Chief Mook Siam stared intently at Mok Jian'an with a stiff expression. Those who knew that he was a second-tier executive were Jiam Chang, the second-tier executive who had been assigned a mission in the Imperial Palace, and the first-tier executives of the higher-ups in the organization. Coincidentally, he had never seen the face of a first-tier executive. Moreover, the only known figure among the first-tier executives was the Ghost Blade. So he couldn't be sure whether the person in front of him was really from the first tier or not. With this, he tried to say the code phrase that the members of the organization used to identify each other. 3. Before he could say anything, Mok Jian'an cut him off and said, "There's no other way. You keep your head held high without paying respects, so later, when you meet him, know." The third. Thud. Before he could even finish his sentence, Defender-in-Chief Mook Siam knelt on one knee on the floor, bowed his head, and clasped his hands together in a respectful gesture. Mook Siam of the second tier pays his respects to the executive of the first tier. Mook Siam's eyes trembled as he bowed his head. Seeing that he was about to mention the title used to address that person, it was undoubtedly a high-ranking executive of the first tier. Mok Jian'an approached him. "Now you're paying respects. I apologize. Until I could confirm the code phrase or the mark, I couldn't be certain, so I hesitated for a moment. Please forgive me with a generous heart." "Is there a need for forgiveness? I played along like this." "Played along." Swish. At that instant, Mook Siam, who had his head bowed, could see his arms, which were clasped together in a salute, falling to the floor with a burning pain.